Welcome to Politics Done Right. I am your host, Egberto Willies. This is a progressive program that will take the mystery out of politics. This is the program that will encourage you to make sure government becomes we the people. Whether you are liberal, progressive, conservative, or otherwise, you get to air your point of view. We are an independent media outlet that, unlike mainstream media beholden to corporations, we only owe allegiance to you. Remember, you can also send me a tweet at EGBERTOWILLIES. That is at Egberto Willies. Let us engage. It is Politics Done Right. Well, folks, welcome to one more edition of Politics Done Right. I'm Egberto Willies, your host. Thank you so kindly for being a part of the show. We are going to have a great show for you today. And I must say that I'm coming to the show with a very, 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 very heavy heart. I think it's not hard to understand why in Kentucky, Breonna Taylor, once again, the same outcome that we tend to get used to is a reality again. Once again, it's a reality again, to which we question. Is this going to change? When is this going to change? Is it even possible for this to change? Well, of course it is possible for it to change. But under what condition? What will cause this to change? What will cause the change? Look, this is an American problem. This is a problem not just of police officers. Police officers, theoretically speaking, work for us. That's who they're supposed to work for. But at this point in time, for all those that are going to come into our room and start talking about, hey, why don't you look at the violence in the cities and all of that kind of stuff, state violence or violence by the state against a person is completely different than violence otherwise. It is important that people understand that. It is difficult, it is hard to somehow give any justification where somebody is killed in their home by officers, and that when the grand jury returns, not a mention of that woman who got killed in her home is mentioned, and the only indictment that occurs is from a stray bullet that was shot irresponsibly into somebody else's home. Explain that to me. An innocent person in their home. An innocent person in their home. And you know, for somebody to say, oh, well, that was just an accident. That doesn't occur often. It occurred in Dallas. I don't remember the name of the young man who was killed eating ice cream in his couch when a police officer broke in and was quick in killing him, supposedly because she thought she was in her apartment. Wow. And it has happened before, over and over again. I mean, the thing about it is it will continue to happen if there are no consequences. Why should it stop? People have been taught to fear people of a certain hue in this country. They've been taught that. It's not automatic. They have been taught. They have been taught to listen to, or they've been taught to assume that people of a certain hue, however it not being true, that is the case. I mean, if you take a look at violence in this country, if you take a look at where violence, upon whom violence have been exerted upon the most, the people that in this country should be least feared are the people of my hue. Forget about what you hear in the cities about the shoot 'em up bang bangs over there. Illusion is different than reality. For too long, you've been taught. And that's why in all that I do, all that I speak, when I talk about people living together and people listening to each other, one of the reasons I give everybody the benefit of the doubt is because I understand what we have been taught. I even understand the reason we have been taught that. I understand. I really, really do. But you have to also understand. You have to also understand. Again, that the black attorney general of Kentucky, a Republican, comes out and says it was a justified shooting. It was a justified killing. It was a justified murder. Of course, for political gain. Of course, he's expecting if Trump wins, he may get a position in there for being somebody who did who knows what. But this is serious. I mean, I'm in my office right now. Suppose somebody decide outside to say, "Oh, that guy out there doesn't belong there," and they come busting in here. They'll find some justified reason to do it. They will find some justified reason to do it. That is the plight of people of color and specifically black people. That is the plight. And it doesn't matter if you're an engineer. I'm an engineer. Doesn't matter if you are a radio host. I'm a radio host. It doesn't matter if you're a multimedia host. I'm a multimedia host. It doesn't matter if you're a doctor. My sister is a doctor. It doesn't matter who you are. I remember from the days of Trayvon Martin, my nephew wrote an article that I later posted that said, "What can I do, Mom? What can I do, Mom?" At that time, my nephew was 16 years old. I think it's 16 or 15 years old. All of us doing the right things, but have to be concerned that because there is not a penalty, I don't care if it's a mistake or not. It's certainly, mistakes tend to happen more with people of color. But beyond that, and I want to tell you guys something, because I speak things the way they are. There was a 13-year-old white kid in Utah that got shot up 13 times by the cops. He had autism. That is just as bad. But that is the exception. That is the exception comparatively when based on the total population. That is the exception. Look, Donald Trump, there's going to be protests in Louisville and likely protests throughout the country, justifiably so. There will be disruptors coming in from the right, more than likely. But here's the thing. We need to have the protest, and the protest needs to continue. And let me tell you something else that is very important. Something else that is very important. Donald Trump is going to use this. Donald Trump is going to use this. Actually, Michael Rudnin, that's it. I blogged that a few weeks ago. If you take a look at it, in fact, let me bring that up to let folks understand that my stuff isn't racialized. My stuff is factualized. Not racialized, factualized. And the fact is, if you take a look at, there are studies that have been done. There have been studies that's been done that explains exactly what some different demographics have to deal with the cops. There are studies that are done out there. Let me, as far as that issue in I think it was in Utah. I want to pull that up because I want you guys to understand that this isn't. I make sure to be honest. I make sure to not be hyperbolic. But here is the story that I did when that young kid, the autistic kid, was shot in Utah. And there I said it. And the title of the article that I gave is Mother of Autistic Boy Shot by Police Speaks Out. Then I said, if you still wonder why the defund police movement, then wait till your loved one is the victim. Empathy, anyone? And there I had the picture of the young white kid that was shot 13 times, or how many times? Several times by the police officers unnecessarily as well. Look at the size of the kid. These guys are out of control. There's a certain amount of bravado that goes with a large percentage of these cops. There's a certain amount of bravado. They think, I am the one with the gun. I can do as I please. That is what it's all about. And that is what has to be arrested. That is what that is what society, they work for us. That is what society has to do something about. And until we do it, right now, it's people of color, but as you can see, that 13-year-old kid suffered the bravado of somebody else who wanted to unload his weapon. When is it going to be you? Do we have to wait for it to be you before something gets done? Do we really have to wait that long? So let's be real. And let's see, now just a few. And that's what I've been saying for a long time, Redden. Everybody wants to say, oh, most cops are good. You know, most of them are good. You can't say most cops are good when most cops are quiet when they see things happening. You cannot do that. You cannot say that. I will never live by that tenet. Oh, but you know, most of them are so good. Most of them are so good. Why? You know, when Sylvester Turner, the mayor of Houston came on, he had to fire 4 cops that I think unloaded 21 bullets or something like that into a sick, another person of color with mental problems. And he went on TV and he said, oh, I had to fire these 4 guys, but and then he starts crying. I really don't want you to believe that this is representative of the whole police, the police establishment in Houston or wherever, it doesn't matter. Well, no, it is representative of the entire police system. Have you ever heard these police, the union officers speak? The bravado that they use, we are going to come and get you. They work for us, but they're going to come and get you. Until we stop looking at at police as untouchables, as somebody that's there to just hold up the law for us, as opposed to people who work for us to make sure that the few of us who do wrong are taken care of and the rest of us are fine. When I get stopped by a police officer, my heart is in my throat. It's in my throat when I get stopped. And half of the times they're not, they come to you as opposed to, I work for you. I think you were doing XYZ. Could you please? That is how we are supposed to be addressed. We are paying them. And the bad people, we are also paying them to get the bad people. Not to talk to us rudely. Not to mistreat us. We have to take back the power. We have to take back the power. And until we understand that, they will continue to do what they're doing. Earlier, I wrote something. I started to write. I'm not done with it yet, but I said, non-indictment in Breonna Taylor's murder by cop is a reason for Black Lives Matter. And then I wrote, the Kentucky Attorney General Daniel Cameron, a black man, claimed that the murder of Breonna Taylor was a justified shooting. Really, he did. Breonna Taylor was resting in the sanctity of her home. Crooked cops entered the home. Her boyfriend used his legal gun to attempt to defend the castle. They like to talk about the castle doctrine. In your domicile, in your home, you have full control of your home. They can't come in there and do things in your home. That is your home. When some people protect their home, it's no problem. I can blow your head off in your home. But when others do it, it's death. Okay, so Breonna Taylor was resting in the sanctity of her home. Crooked cops entered the home. Her boyfriend used his legal gun to attempt to defend the castle. Instead of retreating, the crooked cops unloaded and murdered Breonna Taylor. They should have retreated because they didn't make a clean entry. Amazingly, one cop is charged not for murdering Taylor, but for his stray bullets entering the neighbor's apartment, endangering them. Can anyone understand the moniker Black Lives Matter and defund the police? To too many, they are not our friends, but one to distrust. An innocent woman is dead, and the killers are not at fault. Amazing. Welcome to America. And you know what is so funny about it when we talk about crooked cops, right? You know what the police report said initially? That they didn't shoot anybody. She didn't get hurt. That was the initial report. A lie. And it was the same under George Floyd. The official initial report said he died of natural causes, or something of that nature. What we're talking about is a systemic corruption in a police force that should maintain order, but instead one that needs to be feared until we change it. And look, for the longest time growing up, we look at the police. Oh, we need the police. I don't call police officers. I hope nobody comes to raid me or something where I really need to call the police officers, but I don't. Because I know if I call a police officer, I probably become the victim. If somebody's coming into my home and I call the cops, more than likely I am the victim. I'll probably be the victim of the cop. They'll probably open up on me before they open up on the person attacking. That is how we feel about police officers. That is how we trained our kids to feel about police officers. Because all the evidence show that when it comes to bad cop against innocent person of color, bad cops win. And even if there's video, bad cops win. Bad cops win. I mean, how else can you take this, friends? How else can you do it? This is something that we all have to work on. Look, Donald Trump, there's going to be protests, major protests. Donald Trump is going to try to scare white people. He's going to say, hey, we need law and order, not realizing that it's his tenets that is not going to bring law and order, but is going to bring complete and entire mayhem, chaos. That is what Donald Trump is going to bring. So if we really want to take care of this business, the first thing we got to do, protests must continue. Protest must continue. And secondly, that protest must morph into the largest voting for progressive candidates, bar none. Landslide on November 3rd, by November 3rd, because voting has already started. Landslide by November 3rd. Good thing Quinnipiac poll comes out today. I think he's now up by 10 points. I think Biden is up by 10 points now. So people, I am visibly not in the best state right now because this hits home. This hits home. And the reason it hits home, I have a daughter in D.C., I live in Texas, I never ever once, I used to say I don't feel safe when I leave the house and have to be anywhere that there are cops. And now all the protests that I do, I'm around a whole lot of people during the protest as well. Ironically, a protest that I did in St. Louis, we shut down a freeway in St. Louis. And I tell you, I was filming the shutdown in St. Louis and doing all of that as we were bringing the freeway down. That was for the Michael Brown protest that we did out there in St. Louis. And when we shut down the freeway, way in the distance, this part of the freeway is elevated. Way in the distance, I see a whole line of police cars racing down on the opposite side of the freeway. In other words, they were going at the opposite side. And all I could say is, wow, I wonder if this is it. I wonder if this is it. Because here I was. And let me tell you what happened. We were marching with Black Lives Matter in St. Louis, and the Black Lives Matter leaders, again, I'm filming all this stuff, and the Black Lives Matter call out and says, white allies, we need you now. White allies, we need you now. And then all the white folks that were in that, I mean, it was a huge crowd. All of them came and converged to the front of the line and locked arms. And the leaders of Black Lives Matter was on the second row. It was the first row of our white allies and the second row of Black Lives Matter. And then the police officers stopped. And as we were marching down the ramp, the protest was to hold the freeway closed for an hour. And as we marched down the ramp, we're marching down the ramp. And the police officers, and I'm filming and I'm saying, hey officer, so what do you think? We just want to make sure to keep you all safe. You know, that's what he's talking, because now I'm reporting, right? And right next to me is the reporter from Huffington Post on one side, then the reporter from CNN on the other side, and we're walking down. And you know, that's what he wants to sound like on air. And then of course a week later, we saw what happened to some of the BLM folks in St. Louis. So it is interesting. It is interesting, because until we take control, it's not going to happen. Anyhow, we have a good program for you today. Sorry to start out with this, because again, this is personal, but this is something that our white allies need to be a part of, and stop being white allies, but being white complicits. We have to do something as complicits. What we need is complicits. And by the way, Tank 28, I have relatives that are EMTs. I have relatives that are cops. I have relatives that are detectives. I have relatives in every profession, professional and otherwise, in the legal strata, from lawyers to detectives to police officers. We participate in America. My entire family participate in America. And even the cops in my family would tell you what happens behind the scenes. Okay? That is what we're talking about. Anyhow, let's go ahead and talk about what the program is going to be. Sorry for taking this over a long time, but this again, it just came through, and it has a material effect on my psyche, because I know how much we have to get done. I know how this is going to be spun by Donald Trump as the protest gets heavy. But what I have to tell you is, let's turn that protest into action. Let's let him not be able to turn these protests into white scare. And let's bring our white folks on with us to kick him out of office and kick all his appendages out, all his enablers out, so that we can finally start passing laws that actually aids everybody. Anyhow, title of the show today: America continues to support black murder by cop. Activists back from Sweden talks herd immunity. Black lives are endangered by the cops who know they can kill blacks at will. Activist Eleanor Goldfield talks herd immunity on return from Sweden. So the two topics are, the first one I think I pretty much covered. The Kentucky Attorney General Daniel Cameron, a black man, claimed that the murder of Breonna Taylor was justified shooting. Really, not one indictment has been returned for Taylor's murder. Second item, which we're going to play now, is activist Eleanor Goldfield does not have to assume anything about the herd immunity, what herd immunity looks like. She is from there, and she was there a few days ago. So she speaks. But before we bring on Eleanor Goldfield, great activist, great friend of mine. We've been different events together where we do the rallies and we all the right things. But let's go ahead and talk about Dr. Fauci. Dr. Fauci did something very important today. He stopped Rand Paul in his tracks as he was lying to America by giving them misleading information. Check this out, and then we'll take it on the other side.
Dr. Fauci, today you said you are not for economic lockdown, yet your mitigation recommendations from dating to baseball to restaurants to movie theaters have led to this economic lockdown. Do you have any second thoughts about your mitigation recommendations, considering the evidence that despite all of the things we've done in the U.S., our death rate is essentially worse than Sweden, equivalent to the less developed world that is unable to do any of the things that you've been promoting? Do you have any second thoughts? Are you willing to look at the data that countries that did very little actually have a lower death rate than the United States?
You know, Senator, I'd be happy at a different time to sit down and go over detail. You've said a lot of different things. You've compared us to Sweden, and there are a lot of differences. And you said, well, you know, there are a lot of differences between Sweden, but compare Sweden's death rate to other comparable Scandinavian countries. It's worse. So I don't think it's appropriate to compare Sweden with us. Yes, we have, I think in the beginning, we've done things based on the knowledge we had at the time. And hopefully, and I am, and my colleagues are humble enough and modest enough to realize that as new data comes, you make different recommendations. But I don't regret saying that the only way we could have really stopped the explosion of infection was by essentially, I want to say shutting down, I mean essentially having the physical separation and the kinds of recommendations that we've made.
But you've been a big fan of Cuomo and the shutdown in New York. You've lauded New York for their policy. New York had the highest death rate in the world. How could we possibly be jumping up and down and saying, oh, Governor Cuomo did a great job? He had the worst death rate in the world.
No, you misconstrued that, Senator, and you've done that repetitively in the past. They got hit very badly. They've made some mistakes. Right now, if you look at what's going on right now, the things that are going on in New York to get their test positivity 1% or less is because they are looking at the guidelines that we have put together from the task force of the 4 or 5 things of masks, social distancing, outdoors more than indoors, avoiding crowds, and washing hands.
Or they've developed enough community immunity that they're no longer having the pandemic because they have enough immunity in New York City to actually stop.
I challenge that, Senator, because I want, please, sir, I would like to be able to do this because this happens with Senator Rand all the time. You were not listening to what the director of the CDC said, that in New York, it's about 22%. If you believe 22% is herd immunity, I believe you're alone in that.
There's also the pre-existing immunity of those who have cross-reactivity, which is about 1/3 of the public in many estimates from studies, which would actually get you to about 2/3.
I'd like to talk to you about that also, because there was a study that recently came out that pre-existing immunity to coronaviruses that are common cold do not cross-react with the COVID-19.
You know, that is what's so dangerous. I don't know if you understand that last part. They want to claim that New York had some sort of herd immunity, and that's why now their rates are so low. It is horrendous to do that. You get the common cold sometimes once a year, sometimes several times a year. You don't ever develop full immunity to these types of viruses. Tank said, "Oh, Dr. Fauci did so well with AIDS." Actually, he did. They do realize that if coronavirus behaves like AIDS, we are in trouble, because AIDS only can be maintained. We can just keep that virus in check. We have not been able yet to create a cocktail that, first of all, knocks it out, but secondly, give you real immunity. They're still working on that to get it officialized, but to give you real immunity to AIDS. So no. He did a great job. AIDS is a difficult thing, and it just may turn out that coronavirus maybe could be just as tricky. We don't know, but we don't know what we don't know. And what Rand Paul and the president and all those of his ilk are doing is killing Americans. And not only killing Americans, maiming them going forward. There's another piece that I wanted to put out that I forgot to tape, but it was when one of the senators said, "Wait a minute, isn't it true that coronavirus don't, even if you are asymptomatic, which means you don't know that you have it, but that you later find out that you have it. They're starting to do some tests that find out you're starting to have some inflammation tissue that goes on, that you don't know about. I mean, if you're another athlete or something like that and you have inflammation of the heart, you could get different infarcts in your heart that you don't know about. And that later in life, it comes to fruition, pre-existing condition. So we have a Republican Party that doesn't want to support pre-existing conditions or any of these things, but at the same time, they want you to say, okay, let's just go ahead and forget about the ACA and all these good. I mean, it is a mess, folks. It's a mess. Anyhow, folks, if you're just joining us, if you're on YouTube, please consider joining our channel. We do a lot of good things. Today isn't my best day, my best beginning, because like I said, I allowed what occurred in Kentucky to really have an influence on my being. It really hit very hard. So I'm sorry for the tonality of the beginning, but let me tell you, folks, please go ahead and consider becoming subscribers of our YouTube channel. Just click that join button there, or you can also give us a super chat by hitting that $sign. But hit that join sign and become a member. We do a lot of work. We're going to make sure that we win 2020 in a landslide, because we cannot do it. We cannot do it without your assistance. The right wing makes sure that its people are always funded. We need that as well. And, as far as talking to folks on the right, have you known what happens is I believe in talking to all sides. So please go ahead and consider getting my book. The name of the book is It's Worth It, How to Talk to Your Right-Wing Relatives, Friends, and Neighbors. I just put the link in the feed. It's at Amazon, but you can buy it directly from us if you want as well, to cut out the middleman and go to our store if you choose so. It doesn't matter to me which one you buy, but we make better if you go to our store. But again, whatever is easier for you. There it is, politicsdoneright.com/store, politicsdoneright.com/store, to become an official member of Politics Done Right as well. You can join us via Patreon, and that is politicsdoneright.com/Patreon, politicsdoneright.com/Patreon. You can support us by joining us at politicsdoneright.com/PayPal, politicsdoneright.com/PayPal. And those of you who are not on YouTube but would like to go for that $1.99 YouTube special, where we do what again? On our YouTube special, what do? We're gonna have like a meetup on YouTube on October 3rd, talking election, and that is how you get there. Just type politicsdoneright.com/YouTube, politicsdoneright.com/YouTube. Folks, we have a lot to do. Okay, let me bring on my good friend, Eleanor Goldfield. She's going to talk about her trip to Sweden and what's going on in Sweden. She wrote a great article. I saw the article and I called her up. I said, "Hey, girl, that article had me walking through the banks of I don't remember the name of the city now. The banks that, just as you wrote it, explained it, and talked about herd immunity, etc." Anyway, here is Eleanor Goldfield, activist extraordinaire out of Washington, D.C. Welcome to one more edition of Politics and Random. Egberto Willis, your host. I'm here once again with Eleanor Goldfield. You know what we call her? The activist extraordinaire. She's here with us. She's just back from Sweden. As you guys know, the Trump people and a whole lot of other folks believe in this thing called herd immunity, just what they tried in her hometown or her home country in Sweden. So let's go ahead and introduce this wonderful lady. How are you doing, Eleanor?
I'm pretty well. How about you?
I am great. Look, I am sorry to pull you in after a long days of doing your activism, but you know what? America needs to hear from you. So let's do a little bit of talking. You are an American, but you have Swedish ancestry, right?
I have dual citizenship, yeah.
You have dual citizenship, and you know everything there is to know about Sweden.
I would not claim that, but I know more than your average American.
Okay, great. Well, you went over there, and I think you wrote an article titled "Case Off the Cliff: No Socialist Paradise. Sweden is COVID-19 response is nothing to envy." Why did you write the article?
I felt it was important to write the article because it's something that until you really see it, it's hard to believe that Sweden is so separate from the rest of the world when it comes to the response to COVID. Even when it comes to the United States, I mean, to give you an example, Sweden has roughly the population size of North Carolina. And Sweden has almost 6,000 COVID deaths. North Carolina has roughly 3,000. And even though North Carolina is also my home state, I partially grew up there as well. It's an embarrassment that the country of Sweden is doing 2 times worse than the state of North Carolina at dealing with COVID. And I feel like I felt that it was important that people really understand the failure of policy that led to these totally unnecessary deaths.
Now, you are, let's talk a little bit about Sweden first, because, over here, those of us who are of the Bernie Sanders ilk, if you will, we have a tendency to look at Scandinavian countries and say how great they are because of the great social programs that they have, et cetera, et cetera. What's the problem with them? Don't they still have a good set of social programs? What happened?
So here's the thing, Sweden has been gradually shifting towards the right. They've kind of been looking at the US, and as opposed to looking at the US in horror, they've been looking at the US like, maybe we'll try that. So for instance, everything from privatizing their railway system to privatizing elder care, which is why, you see some of the horrific deaths that have happened under COVID. So it's kind of like a neoliberalist paradise, and it maintains this facade of a democratic socialism. But to be perfectly honest, Sweden was never really socialist in the sense that someone like Professor Wolf might understand it, that the workers owned their means of production. No, Sweden has always been capitalist, or since the advent of capitalism, it's just had better socialized programs, and a lot of those programs are still in place. So, for instance, people enjoy vacation time. They enjoy parental leave, but there are lots of loopholes. So for instance, if you're only a temp worker, then you don't get a lot of the same benefits that other people who are full-time employees enjoy. So there have been a lot of ways for corporations to weasel in and kind of break down this socialized structure. And what's happened with COVID in Sweden, much like in the US, is it's really cast a stark spotlight on the failures of that so-called socialist system, and revealed that it is in fact very capitalist, and that a lot of these folks were simply left to die, as opposed to dealing with the situation. And this isn't just a failure of that elder policy. For instance, it's a failure of the COVID policy, because if you look next door in Norway is also capitalist, but they've had roughly 200 deaths. And Sweden has had almost 6,000. So what you have is a combination of the failure to act on COVID, and you have the gradual stripping away of these socialized systems towards a more cutthroat capitalist system like we have in the United States.
Now, you mentioned something that sort of it's in concert with something a friend wrote for my blog a few days ago, where most of the people that are dying are the elderly in Sweden. And you kind of wonder if that's a double-edged sword, sort of happy for the country in that, wow, these less productive people. Tell me a little bit about that, because I mean, I noticed you spent a few paragraphs talking about that, and I'm like, coming from Eleanor, that meant something. She wanted to convey some message. What was the message you were trying to convey there?
Well, yeah, I mean, I can't remember the exact quote, but it's basically, you can judge a country or a system based on how it treats its most marginalized or the poorest people, or, and I think that that's very true. And if you judge Sweden by how it's treating its elderly, as you pointed out, they're not, useful for a capitalist system anymore, then that is an atrocious system. And, basically what's happened is that Sweden has kind of shrugged and said, well, it's almost 6,000 people, but it's 6,000 old people. So, And so you have people on the right and the center kind of shrugging, and then you have people on the left saying, yeah, that's bad, but it's not the COVID policy, it's the problem with our elder care. And it's like, well, no, it's both. Those people didn't have to die. And I think that this really just kind of speaks to this sort of disconnect of how a system should run and how a system should treat people, regardless of how useful they are for bolstering the bottom line. And the fact of the matter is that Sweden didn't help its economy. Its economy is doing worse than its neighbors, and more people died. So, you know, the global capitalist economy doesn't really care if the bars in Sweden are open. They care about what the global economy is doing. And so Sweden really shot itself in the foot because it didn't save the economy and it didn't save lives.
That is amazing. And, you know, that is what a lot of people aren't here on the right mostly haven't yet realized. They are still thinking that herd immunity will work. And one of the other interesting thing is herd immunity only works is after you get the disease, somehow you become immune, right?
Well, what's so funny about herd immunity, first of all, it's absurd. And many epidemiologists have pointed out to attempt herd immunity when you don't have a vaccine
Right.
is really suicidal or homicidal, really.
Homicidal, right.
And then Anders Tegnell, who was the you know, kind of like the Fauci of Sweden, his response has been very wishy-washy. He has lately said that, oh, herd immunity wasn't the point. That wasn't what we were going for, when leaked emails show that, or not leaked emails, but emails gotten via a FOIA request show that he did want herd immunity. And his initial emails between himself and his counterpart in Finland, his counterpart in Finland said, well, you know, look, if you keep the schools open, children are carriers, and you could have a 10% increased death rate if you let children go to school. And Tegnell's response was, well, maybe 10% is worth it. Worth it for what? For what exactly?
Right.
So it's absolutely sick thinking, and herd immunity is not happening, because herd immunity requires the majority of the people to have that immunity, and that's not at all what you see happening in Sweden. And so it's absolutely absurd from a scientific perspective, from a human rights perspective, just from any angle, it's absurd.
Let me tell you what I loved about your article is when I was reading the article, I was actually in Sweden. In other words, I was walking down the road and I saw that you saw a very empty space. And why don't you narrate that? Because I mean, it was just like me walking down, and then, I mean, you're a very good writer. I just have to say that, because I was walking down and then I went into the crowded space. Tell us a little bit about what you actually visualized when you got there and what shocked you.
So I spent most of my time in Sweden, where my mom lives, which is out in the middle of nowhere. And I only went into Stockholm for one day, mostly because I wanted to kind of see for myself. And I had my mask on, which, first of all, walking around with my mask on, everyone looked at me like I was absolutely insane because no one's wearing a mask at all. It's like you were wearing a mask before the pandemic hit. Everyone's like, what's that all about? And so it's a beautiful walk through the city, and walking along the water, and you see these faded stickers on the street that say, you know, please keep your distance, but they look like they're from, you know, this bygone era when a pandemic was something you had to care about. And then you walk along the water, you walk past the royal palace, and the only time that I really felt that there might be a pandemic is when I reached the old town, which is typically a tourist trap. And the only people not out are tourists. The Swedes are all out.
That was so, and you know, you didn't even say it that way, but immediately, I'm like, oh, so that's what she's saying. The locals are the ones. Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. And so the old town was pretty empty, and there were these kind of eerie, creepy, like handwritten notes on some shop windows that said, like, you know, we have limited hours or we're closed, but they didn't say like what the hours were or how long they'd be closed. It was just very eerie. And then you continue walking and you go across the water to Söder, which is the southern island of Stockholm. And that's, you know, not very touristy. And that's just filled with people. It's like nothing ever happened. And I literally, like, nobody saw it because I had my mask on, but I just like stood there, mouth agape, just looking at these, you know, bicyclists are zipping to and fro. People are stopping to talk. They're, you know, they're walking close to one another. And it was just so mind-boggling. And, you know, even places like pharmacies, people are walking in and out without any masks on. And I mean, it's so bizarre, just walking through those people, it really felt like I was the crazy person because I was the one wearing a mask.
But you know what was interesting is that in the part of the article you said, well, yeah, but some of these people, it's not worse because there also are a lot of people that are just on their own taking care of themselves, and that's a message I think we need to learn here in America. In other words, you don't have to follow the Joneses. You can just go ahead and do what you have to do for yourself, your family, and your friends.
Well, and that was really one of the points that I wanted to make with the article is that people have, nearly there was a study that showed that nearly a third of the population stayed home voluntarily when they
Hmm.
weren't asked to. High risk people, I saw a lot of elderly, for instance, in stores. Not a lot because I didn't see a lot of elderly, but I saw some elderly folks that had masks or they had like the face shield. And this is, for all the people who are so like into the freedom of Sweden, try this one on for size. A lot of people also tried to keep their kids home from school when school started up again. But in Sweden, you're not allowed to do that. There's no such thing as homeschooling unless it's an extreme circumstance, which is very vague. So they would call social services if somebody tried to keep their kids home and not in school, or they'd be fined. So it's not like this. It's not like these right wingers want to believe. So there have been people that have bucked the stupidity of the system, and that is really why the death toll is not higher. And that is, as you noted, this is something that we need to recognize in the U.S. too. That the people that have the power are not the ones that you need to listen to. There always has to be a questioning, like, well, is this really best for us? Is this really going to help us, or is this just going to help them?
Well, yeah, it's great to have somebody who was actually there and not, have to buy the Kool-Aid as far as how things are over there in Sweden. Okay, I want to move on a little bit because I can't have you here and not ask you for the temperature of the country. So why don't you give me the temperature of the country in the eyes of the activists?
Uh, well, it is as we've said in our mutual aid circles, it's a blue dumpster fire and it's a red dumpster fire, and both are just as
Yes.
atrocious. And both are, leading, both are pouring fuel on the fire, and I think that particularly with what's happening now with the run-ups to the election, it's going to get nastier. You're going to see more vote shaming. And I think we as a people need to recognize when people get scared about the rise of fascism, recognize that the rise of fascism is not does not lay on the shoulders of Donald Trump. It does not lay at his feet. It is a systemic problem.
Thank you. Please explain that so people understand that Donald Trump is just the result of what has been going on for quite a while now.
You wouldn't have a Donald Trump if you didn't have the people that came before him. And you wouldn't have our military industrial complex the way that it is without the people that came before him. You wouldn't have the surveillance state if Obama didn't make it a larger surveillance state. To look at just Trump is like looking at a boil on a plague-ridden body. Yes, it's gross and unsightly, just like Donald Trump, but the entire body is sick. Our entire body politic is dying because of the system. And it's so important that we recognize that, because it's the lesser of two evil voting that has brought us to this point. Because if you look back at 2000, there were so many people saying, oh, you have to vote for the Democrat because we couldn't possibly have Bush. Our country will just fall apart if we have Bush in office. Okay, well, it wasn't great. But this idea that this is always the most important election, that is something I've been hearing since I was, in my early teens in 2000. So this is, I think it's important that we recognize that our two-party system is really a one-party system. It's a corporate system. And as Mussolini himself said, a better name for fascism would really be corporatism.
Exactly right. Now, I want to be hopeful. And I think you want to be hopeful because you wouldn't be doing what you're doing if you didn't want to be hopeful. Now, you're the younger generation. What are you doing? What are you inspiring others to do?
I am actually very hopeful. And part of that hope comes from people that are even younger than me. I've interacted with 16, 17-year-olds during the protests here that are way more like advanced politically than I was at that age. They have like deep understandings of capitalism and systemic racism and things like that, which is awesome. But I also think, there was somebody that said this to me recently. It's not about overthrowing the government. It's about making the government obsolete. Because most of the time the government it obstructs. It is in the way of our ability to survive and to thrive. And other times it just doesn't do anything. So we are the ones who, as we say in mutual aid, we keep us safe. And mutual aid endeavors across the country and indeed the world are very hopeful to me. Just before I came to talk to you, we were working on a community garden here because folks live in a food desert. In the capital of the free world, folks aren't able to feed themselves and their families. So we're working on creating green spaces where people can not only get food, but learn about food sovereignty and things like that. So these are the hopeful endeavors that I think will see us not only through this moment, but see us through whatever the hell is going to happen afterwards.
No, wait, I'm sorry. I'll need 2 more minutes of your time. Tell me a little bit about your what is it called? The organization?
So it's a mutual aid. We're a DC mutual aid, but mutual aid is a concept that.
But you said you have. So you have. I was in an Uber in DC recently, and the Uber driver told me he had a garden on a block that doesn't have anything on it. Is that what you guys do as well, or?
Well, this is actually this one is in the backyard of a friend of ours. But yeah, that's something, taking over, abandoned lots. That's
Right,
something that we've seen happen too. Even rooftop spaces that are just like empty. People are turning those into green space with just some milk crates and some soil. It's pretty easy to get going. And even somebody like me who didn't really have a green thumb is hacking my way through it. So it can be done.
That sounds like fun. Okay, give me a closer. Tell me something that you want all our audience to know. And by the way, we have audience right, left, and middle.
Well, I would just say, think for yourselves. One of the things that, and I know that sounds trite and cliche, but it is for a reason because people don't do it very often. Common sense isn't that common. I think that it's so important that we decouple our minds from the decrees of our politicians. And that goes for folks on both sides of the aisle.
Eleanor Goldfield, thank you so kindly for being here with us. And till we meet again, because I know there's a hell of a lot more that you're going to have to say in the future.
Well, it's always great to be with you. Thank you.
All right, folks, I hope you like that. That is Eleanor. Works very hard. Real strong activist out there in DC. And I'm writing up the blog for this particular post. She does a lot of poetry, music as well. Have a band that's, pretty solid. Anyhow, let me see if I haven't done all my introduction. First of all, I want to again give our big or número uno kudos to para ver dónde está. I'm getting old. Okay, this one is for Linda Jo Kessinger, our new member. Thank you so kindly for joining. Come on, folks. Join Linda if you're on YouTube or wherever you are, and just click that join button to become a member on YouTube. I'm going to copy paste it in there again. There we go. Bingo. Click on that and join via YouTube. ActTV is pretty good too. ActTV. I actually know some of the hosts at ActTV. We do some stuff together when we go out to Netroots Nation. Actually, a couple of times our tables were next to each other. Politics Done Right here and ActTV right there. And then what is it called? From St. Eucor. What's this show? You know what I meant. TYT. The Young Turks. Anyhow, all of these are people that should be supported, folks. Young Turks, ActTV, what's his name? Tom Hartman, all these programs. Politics Done Right. We all need this. That's the alternative media. And we all communicate with each other. Because just like you have the ABC, CBS doing their things, we do our thing as well. So all of these guys need support. We all need your support. So don't forget to do that, man. Anyhow, please consider giving us a support at politicsdoneright.com/Patreon, Or again, if you're on YouTube, click join. Anyhow, welcome aboard. Let's see who's here today. Michael Rudnin, my regular. Brige MCP, how are you doing, my regular as well? D. Rabbit White, welcome aboard. Let's see who else is here. AVQ, Mark Damon. Para ver, vamos comenzando también. Tank 28 is always here giving me hell. Tank 28, you're progressive. You just don't realize it yet. Let's see who else is here. Para ver dónde estoy. Let's see. D. I think I got D Rabbit White already. Lee Grant, how you doing, Lee? Welcome aboard. Lee said Sweden doing poorly on immigration too. It's become the rape capital of Europe. You have to be careful of what you read. I mean, it is funny, right? If you're rape capital of I don't know. I can't say I know whether you're saying that correctly or not, but I'll just be quiet on that. Let's see what else is there. Who else is here? Who else is here? First, last. Welcome aboard. I think that's the first time I've seen that person here. First, last. Thank you for being here. First, last. Who else? Lawrence Sim. How you doing, Lawrence? Thank you for being here. Let's see. I got Tank. You've been busy in the thing today. More busy than usual, I think. Who else is here? Dimitri OG, ¿cómo estás, hermano? Bruce Phillips, welcome aboard. Deidre Scott, how you doing, girl? I know. It's kind of, I know you don't want to hear about it, but we got to hit it head on. Deidre says, I can't listen right now, but I'm giving you a public share. Thank you so kindly, Deidre. We need them all. Deborah John, welcome aboard. I'll read, wow, that's a long thing that you send there. I'll read that right after the show. Paul Fleming, welcome aboard. Look, guys, thank you so kindly, all of you, for being here. I know you have places that you can be. There are a lot of places on the internet everybody can be. So if you are so kind, hey, Norman Reynolds, how you doing, hermano? Te llamo más tarde. Anyhow, here's the deal. I know you have places that you can go. I really do. So it is my honor that you are here with us. So thank you so kindly for being here. I also ask you, however, to share. We have quite a bit to offer. Our words, our books, what we talk about, we have a lot to offer. Let's build this community, and a community that makes sense, one that has information that others can use, one that tries to get away from misinformation, one that learns together and is able to do positive things. My name is Egberto Willies. This is Politics Done Right, and you know how I end this baby. I am what? Out! Welcome to Politics Done Right. I am your host, Egberto Willies. This is a progressive program that will take the mystery out of politics. This is the program that will encourage you to make sure government becomes we the people. Whether you are liberal, progressive, conservative, or otherwise, you get to air your point of view. We are an independent media outlet that, unlike mainstream media beholden to corporations, we only owe allegiance to you. Remember, you can also send me a tweet at EGBERTOWILLIES. That is at Egberto Willies. Let us engage. It is Politics Done Right.